The commander's voice was a blunt instrument. It hammered against the concrete walls of the Tactical Operations Center, a percussive force of unearned certainty. He was a large man, built like a battering ram, and he moved through the cramped space as if daring the consoles and conduits to defy him. His physical presence was an argument in itself. The air, thick with the smell of ozone, hot electronics, and bitter coffee, seemed to part for him. Junior officers and technicians hunched over their screens, their shoulders tightening reflexively as he passed. They feared his certainty. They mistook his volume for authority. In the far corner of the room, tucked behind a secondary signals analysis station, a woman sat perfectly still. She was not part of the frantic energy that pulsed through the center. She was a pool of absolute calm in a sea of controlled chaos. Her uniform was plain, devoid of the ribbons and rank insignia that adorned the others. It was the sterile gray of a specialist, a technician, a ghost in the machine. Her focus was on a single dark screen, her hands resting motionless on either side of the keyboard. The commander stopped his patrol, his shadow falling across her station like a dropped curtain. He stared at the back of her head, at the simple, severe knot of dark hair. He saw stillness and interpreted it as idleness. He saw quiet and heard incompetence. "What is this?" he boomed, his voice echoing with practiced indignation. The question was not for her. It was for the audience of subordinates who now watched, their work forgotten. The senior analyst, a man whose face was a roadmap of 100 forgotten crises, looked up from his own console. He saw the commander looming over the woman and felt a familiar weariness settle in his bones. "That is the new signals specialist, Commander," the analyst said, his voice a low counterpoint to the commander's roar. The commander grunted, a sound of profound dismissal. He stepped closer, invading her personal space, using his size as a tool of intimidation. "Specialist," he said, the word dripping with condescension. "We have an active theater. We are running threat assessments on 3 fronts. We do not have time for passengers." The woman did not turn. She did not flinch. Her eyes remained fixed on the blank screen. Her breathing did not alter its slow, measured rhythm. The commander's face tightened. Her silence was an unexpected form of resistance. It was a wall he could not simply shout down. He leaned in, placing a heavy hand on the back of her chair, jostling it. It was a petty physical assertion of dominance. "Look at me when I'm speaking to you, specialist." Slowly, with the deliberate grace of a predator conserving energy, she turned her head. Her eyes were the color of a winter sea. They were not angry. They were not fearful. They were analytical. They scanned his face, his posture, the slight tremor of impatience in his hand. She was not seeing a commander. She was seeing a data set, a collection of predictable variables. The commander felt a flicker of unease, a cold draft in the warm room of his self-assurance. He mistook it for anger. "I reviewed your file," he lied. "Some academic prodigy, all theory, no field time. We are not a university specialist. This is the sharp end." He gestured vaguely at the holographic map table in the center of the room, where red icons pulsed with hostile intent. "I want her on transcription duty, monitoring internal comms logs. Don't give her a real mission." The order was directed at the senior analyst, but his eyes were locked on the woman. He was daring her to protest. He was expecting tears, or a stammered defense, or a flash of indignant rage. He received nothing. She simply turned her head back to the dark screen. The gesture was a dismissal more profound than any shouted insult. It was as if he had ceased to exist. A low chuckle escaped the senior analyst before he could stifle it. It was a small, humorless sound. The commander's head snapped toward him. "Something funny, analyst?" "No, Commander," the analyst said, his expression becoming a mask of professional neutrality. "Transcription duty, understood." The commander glared for a moment longer, then turned and stalked away, his boots thudding with righteous purpose. He had reasserted his dominance. He had put the quiet woman in her place. The room returned to its work, the low hum of machinery and muttered conversations filling the void he left behind. The analyst watched the woman. He had actually read her file. He had read it 3 times. Much of it was blacked out, redacted with thick lines of institutional secrecy. But what remained was the stuff of legend. She was not an academic. She was a weapon. forged in a place he could not comprehend. Her specialty was listed as polymorphic signal decryption. He had never heard the term before. When he had queried the central database, the request was immediately flagged, and he received a call from a 3-star general who told him, in no uncertain terms, to stop asking questions. The general had said only one other thing. "She is not there to work for you. She is there to work on the problem you cannot solve." The analyst understood. The commander did not. The commander saw a small, quiet woman, and his mind, a blunt instrument of its own, could only process the data through the crude filters of his prejudice. He could not see the stillness for what it was. It was not passivity. It was discipline. A discipline so absolute it was nearly inhuman. It had been forged in fire and loss on a cold mountainside half a world away. She was a child then, but she remembered the feel of the wind, a razor slicing across the exposed rock. She remembered her father's hands, calloused but gentle, guiding her own on the controls of a portable signals receiver. He was a legend in the signals corps, a man who could hear a whisper in a hurricane. He did not teach her theory, he taught her philosophy. "The signal is always there," he would say, his voice a low murmur against the howl of the wind. "You just have to be quiet enough to hear it. The universe doesn't shout, it whispers. Arrogance is a deafness of the soul. It fills your head with your own noise, and you miss the truth." He was part of a forward observation team, isolated, tracking a high-value target. Their commander was a man much like the one who now paced the operations center, loud, confident, wrong. Her father had detected a ghost signal, a faint, encrypted burst that did not fit the enemy's known patterns. He warned the commander. He said it was a trap. The commander had laughed. He had dismissed the warning as the jitters of a technician. He ordered the advance. She remembered the silence that followed, the sudden, terrifying absence of her father's voice on the comms. The silence was the answer. The silence was the trap springing shut. They found the wreckage of the unit 3 days later. She had stayed by her radio, a child alone on a mountain, listening to the static, listening to the whispers of the universe. In that crushing silence, she made a vow. She would never be deaf. She would master the silence. She would become the quietest mind in the room. She would make discipline her armor and competence her sword. Ego was the enemy. It was a tactical liability, a fatal flaw in the system. She had stripped it from herself, piece by piece, until all that remained was the mission. The institution had tried to break her. They put her through every psychological test, every stress simulation. They subjected her to men like the commander, over and over, expecting her to fail. She did not react. She did not rush. She did not fear. She simply solved the problem, every time. Eventually, they stopped testing her and started aiming her. They pointed her at the impossible problems, the signals that could not be unscrambled, the codes that could not be cracked. She became a ghost in their own machine, a legend whispered about in secure facilities. And now she was here, in this forward base, tasked with transcribing logs. Because the man in charge was deaf. She did not feel anger. She felt a cold, clinical pity. He was a vulnerability, a weakness in the system, and the universe, she knew, had a way of exploiting weakness. She turned her attention back to her screen. She was not idle. She was listening, not to the comms chatter of the base, but to the deep, ambient noise of the entire sector, the background radiation, the solar winds, the faint, overlapping signals of 1,000 civilian and military broadcasts. To everyone else, it was static. To her, it was a symphony. She was mapping its currents, learning its rhythms, establishing a baseline, because when the real signal came, it would be a deviation from that baseline, a single, discordant note. She did not have to wait long. The crisis did not arrive with a bang. It arrived with a quiet chime from the central command console. A single icon on the holographic map blinked from green to red, and then went dark. It was codenamed Pathfinder, a diplomatic convoy, high-value personnel. It had been traversing the Kavras Pass, a treacherous ribbon of road through a jagged mountain range known for its sudden, violent weather and hostile local militias. "Status on Pathfinder," the commander barked, his voice cutting through the low hum of the room. A young lieutenant at the comm station went pale. "No contact, sir. Their signal just Vanished. What do you mean, vanished? The commander demanded, striding to the map table. Get them back. Try their emergency frequency. Trying, sir. Nothing but static. As if on cue, the weather feed for the Kavros Pass updated. A deep blue mass, the color of a bruise, bloomed over the mountains. A supercell. A blizzard of historic intensity, arriving hours ahead of schedule. The temperature in the pass was plummeting. Winds were already gusting to over 100 kilometers per hour. The room grew quiet. The confident swagger of the commander faltered for a fraction of a second. This was a black swan event, a catastrophic failure of intelligence and meteorology. They must have taken shelter, the commander said, his voice a little too loud. They're following protocol. Find their last known position. I want a quick reaction force spun up. We're going in. The senior analyst stepped forward. Commander, we can't send a QRF into that storm. It would be suicide. Our aerial assets are grounded. The pass will be impassable on the ground within the hour. So we do nothing? The commander shot back. We let them freeze to death? His authority was being challenged. His response was aggression. It was the only tool he had. No, sir. We wait for a break in the weather. We try to reestablish communications. There won't be a break for at least 72 hours, a meteorology tech reported, his voice grim. They won't last that long. The logic was a cage, and the commander was rattling its bars. He pointed at the last known position on the map. They are here. The protocol is to find a defensible position and activate their long-range emergency beacon. Why aren't we seeing it? The storm, sir, the comms lieutenant offered. The atmospheric interference would shred any signal coming out of that pass. Then boost the gain on our receivers. Focus every dish we have on that sector. It was a useless order. A child's command to stop the rain. The technicians complied, their movements sluggish with the knowledge of its futility. The static on the main speakers deepened, but no signal emerged. The commander was losing control. The certainty was draining from his voice, replaced by the sharp edge of panic. He was making decisions based on ego, not data. He was becoming his own noise. And in the corner of the room, the woman heard it, a discordant note. It was not in the static from the speakers. It was deeper, buried under layers of atmospheric noise and jamming. A whisper. She stood up. The movement was so sudden, so out of character with her previous stillness, that it drew every eye in the room. She walked toward the main command console. She did not hurry. Her steps were measured, her posture perfect. She moved with the quiet lethality of a torpedo gliding through the water. The commander saw her approach, and his fear curdled into rage. Get back to your station, specialist. This is a command-level situation. She did not look at him. She did not acknowledge his existence. Her eyes, the color of a winter sea, were fixed on the tactical display. She reached the primary console, and the young lieutenant seated there instinctively recoiled, as if from a source of intense heat or cold. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. Code scrolled across the screen at a speed no one could follow. She was not using the standard interface. She was peeling back the layers of the operating system, accessing the raw data feed from the sector-wide sensor array. What in the hell do you think you're doing? The commander bellowed, moving to grab her shoulder. The senior analyst stepped between them. It was a quiet, definitive act of insubordination. Let her work, Commander. Get out of my way, analyst. No, sir. The commander stared, dumbfounded. His physical power, his rank, his volume, none of it mattered. The analyst's quiet certainty was a shield he could not breach. On the main screen, a new window opened. It was not a map. It was a chaotic, three-dimensional representation of raw signal data, a storm of light and color. The beacon is active, the woman said. Her voice was calm and clear. It cut through the tension in the room like a shard of ice. It was the first time most of them had heard her speak more than a single word. The commander scoffed. That's impossible. We're getting nothing but noise. You are listening for a sound, she stated, her eyes never leaving the screen. The signal is not a sound. It's a pattern, a ghost in the noise. She explained it with a chilling, detached clarity. The convoy's beacon was a standard military issue, but it had a fail-safe protocol, a handshake protocol designed for catastrophic signal degradation. It was broadcasting on a spread spectrum, hopping between thousands of frequencies a second in a pseudo-random pattern. The blizzard was acting as a chaotic filter, shredding the signal into infinitesimal pieces. But that was not all. "There is a jammer," she said. "Hostile. Localized. It's not trying to block the signal. It's trying to hide inside it. It's mimicking the storm's interference, adding its own layer of noise to the chaos." Her fingers moved again, isolating threads of data, weaving them together. "They're not just stranded," she said. "They're being hunted." The room was utterly silent, save for the hum of the machines and the clicking of her keyboard. The commander's face was a mask of disbelief. That's theoretical. It's not possible to decrypt a signal that's being actively ghost-jammed in real time through that level of atmospheric interference. "It is not a decryption problem," she corrected him, her tone still flat, clinical. "It is a geometry problem." On the screen, she collapsed the chaotic 3D model into a two-dimensional waveform. The beacon's hop sequence is not random. It's based on a prime number algorithm. The jammer is using a simpler, brute force noise generator. Their patterns are different. The beacon's pattern is elegant. The jammer's is crude. She was seeing the mathematics behind the chaos. She was seeing the shape of the truth. "Give me a location," the senior analyst said, moving to a plotting table. "I cannot give you a single location," she replied. "The signal is too fragmented. I can give you a probability distribution, a line of potential." She typed a final command. A string of coordinates appeared on the screen. The analyst began to plot them on the holographic map. They did not form a single point. They formed a perfect straight line, cutting through the Kavros Pass. "That's their direction of travel," the analyst breathed, a note of awe in his voice. "The signal is stronger at the trailing end of the distribution," the woman said. "They are moving, slowly, away from their last known position." The commander stared at the line. "They're running." "No," the woman said. "They are being herded." Another set of coordinates appeared on her screen. "The jammer." The analyst plotted the new point. It appeared on the map ahead of the convoy's projected path, at the mouth of a narrow canyon, a perfect kill box. The silence in the room was now heavy, profound. The reality of the situation settled on them like a shroud. The convoy was being driven into a sophisticated ambush. The storm was not a random act of nature. It was the cover. The enemy was using the blizzard as a weapon. "How long?" the commander asked, his voice a hoarse whisper. All his bluster was gone. He was looking at the woman not as a subordinate, but as his only hope. She analyzed the data stream. "The signal strength from the beacon is weakening. Their power is failing. Based on their speed and the location of the jammer, they will enter the kill box in 37 minutes. Panic flickered in the commander's eyes again. "We can't get anyone there in time." "Your QRF is not the solution," the woman stated. "They are the secondary target. The enemy knows you will send them. The ambush is for the convoy and for the rescuers." She pointed to a ridge overlooking the canyon. "There will be another enemy team there, with anti-air capabilities, waiting for your helicopters." She was not guessing. She was reading the logic of the situation, the silent, brutal grammar of combat. "So, what do we do?" the senior analyst asked, his voice steady. "What is the move?" The woman's eyes were unfocused for a moment, staring into the storm of data. She was running 1,000 simulations in her mind. Then her focus returned. It was sharp, precise. "There is a single asset in range," she said. She brought up another file on the screen. It was a classified asset, a lone operator, an experimental long-range sniper unit, designated Ghost 7, currently held in reserve at a small outpost on the far side of the mountain range. "Ghost 7 is over 50 kilometers away," the comms lieutenant protested. "There's no way he can get there, and even if he could, the shot is impossible. Through that storm, at that range, the shot is not for the primary target," the woman said. She highlighted the location of the enemy jammer. "The target is the jammer. It is a piece of electronics. It is fragile." "You want him to shoot a piece of equipment from 50 kilometers away in a blizzard?" the commander asked, his voice laced with incredulity. "Yes," she said. There was no doubt in her voice. It was a statement of fact. If the jammer is destroyed, two things will happen. First, the beacon signal will become clear. We will have the convoy's exact location. Second, the enemy will be deaf and blind. They are relying on the jammer to mask their own communications. They will be thrown into chaos. The logic was flawless. It was terrifyingly elegant. "Patch me through to Ghost 7, she commanded. The comms lieutenant looked at the commander. The commander hesitated for a beat. His entire career, his entire worldview, balanced on the edge of a knife. Then he nodded. "Do it." A voice distorted by atmospheric interference crackled over the speakers. "This is Ghost 7. Go ahead, command." The woman leaned toward the microphone. "Ghost 7, this is Overwatch. I have a new target package for you. Immediate execution." She did not introduce herself. She did not state her rank. She was simply Overwatch, a voice of pure, disembodied authority. "Standing by, Overwatch," the sniper replied. His voice was as calm as hers. "A professional speaking to a professional. Your target is a hostile communications jammer," she began, her voice a steady, rhythmic cadence. "Coordinates to follow. The target is non-human, small, approximately 1 meter by 1 meter. You will have one shot." She began to relay the data. But it was not just coordinates. She gave him barometric pressure readings, humidity levels, wind shear data at 10 different altitudes. She was pulling the data from a dozen different sensor feeds, synthesizing it in real time. She was painting a picture of the battle space with numbers. "The wind at your position is a variable crosswind, gusting from 270, but that is irrelevant. The wind in the target area is a static downdraft, channeled by the canyon. Treat the first 40 kilometers of the shot as standard, but the final 5 kilometers will experience a severe, predictable drop. You will need to aim high. Very high." The room watched, mesmerized. This was a level of tactical awareness they had never witnessed. She was not just seeing the map, she was seeing the physics of the world itself. "There is a latency issue, Ghost 7, she continued. "My data is 1.5 seconds ahead of your reality. I am giving you the solution for a problem that has not yet occurred. You must trust the numbers. Do not trust your instruments. Do not trust your eyes. Trust me." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Understood, Overwatch," the sniper said. "I trust the numbers. Target coordinates are uploading now. You have 90 seconds to acquire and fire. The firing solution will decay after that." A countdown timer appeared on the main screen. The entire operations center held its breath. The commander stood frozen, a statue of obsolete authority. He was a witness now, nothing more. The woman's eyes were closed. She was not looking at the screen. She was visualizing the shot, the long, graceful arc of the bullet, the journey through the storm, the complex dance of gravity and wind, the final precise impact. 30 seconds, the comms lieutenant whispered. "Firing solution confirmed," came the voice of Ghost 7. "On your mark, Overwatch." "Fire on my mark," she commanded. The room was a vacuum. Time seemed to stretch, to become thick and viscous. 3, 2, 1, mark. A single word, a universe of consequence. "Shot away," Ghost 7 reported. Now there was only waiting. The bullet was in the air. A journey of more than a minute. The countdown timer on the screen changed. It was now counting up. Time to impact. The woman opened her eyes. She looked at the chaotic storm of signal data on her screen. She watched it with the calm patience of a scientist observing an experiment. Impact in 5, 4, 3, 2. She did not finish the count. On her screen, the data display changed instantly. The chaotic, angry noise of the jammer vanished. It was as if a scream had been silenced. In its place, a single, clear, repeating pattern emerged. Clean, Armstrong, perfect. The convoy's beacon. A collective gasp went through the room. On the main speakers, the harsh static was replaced by a rhythmic, high-pitched pulse. The sound of survival. "Target destroyed," the woman stated, her voice devoid of triumph. "Direct hit." The analyst plotted the new, precise location. The convoy was 200 meters from the entrance to the kill box. "Patch me through to the convoy," she ordered. The connection was immediate, the signal now crystal clear. "Pathfinder lead, this is Overwatch. Do you copy?" A frantic voice responded. "We copy. We've been blind. We have hostiles closing on our position." "Understood, Pathfinder. Hold your position. Do not enter the canyon. I say again, do not enter the canyon. A friendly asset is neutralizing the threat. Sit tight. Extraction is on its way." She turned to the commander. "The enemy is confused. Their comms are down. Send your QRF now, not to the convoy. To these coordinates. She uploaded the location of the secondary ambush team on the ridge. They will not be expecting you. The commander stared at her, his face pale with awe and something else, fear. He had not been in the presence of a superior officer. He had been in the presence of a superior form of life. He turned to his team, his voice shaky but clear. You heard her. Go. The debriefing took place 12 hours later. The convoy was safe. The hostages were home. The two enemy teams had been captured or eliminated, caught completely by surprise. The room was crowded. On the main view screen was the face of the institutional authority, a 4-star general, his expression like carved granite. The commander stood at the head of the table, attempting to recount the events. He used words like bold and instinct and calculated risk. He was trying to paint a picture of himself as a daring leader who had snatched victory from the jaws of defeat. He was building a self-serving lie. The general listened patiently, his eyes cold and unblinking. When the commander finished his story, a story in which the specialist was a minor character who provided some useful technical support, the general was silent for a long moment. Thank you, Commander, he said finally, his voice dangerously quiet. I have the logs, all of them. The communication logs, the sensor logs, the biometric logs from your command staff. He paused. I know what your heart rate was, Commander. I know you gave orders that would have led the quick reaction force into a massacre. I know you were prepared to sacrifice that convoy and the rescue team because your ego would not allow you to admit you were wrong. The commander's face went white. The general's gaze shifted, looking past the commander to the woman who stood silently at the back of the room. Specialist, he said, and the tone was no longer that of a superior to a subordinate. It was a tone of profound, almost reverent respect. Your official report, please. She stepped forward. She held a small data slate. She did not offer opinions. She did not speak of bravery or fear. She presented facts. At 14:02, the hostile jammer was activated. At 14:31, I established a baseline signal geometry. At 14:58, I issued a firing solution to Asset Ghost 7. At 15:01, the hostile jammer was neutralized. The probability of mission failure under the commander's proposed course of action was 97.4%. The probability of success under my implemented course of action was 99.8%. She finished and fell silent. Her report was an execution, cold, clinical, irrefutable. The general nodded slowly. Commander, he said, his voice like the closing of a vault door. You are relieved of command, effective immediately. You will be transferred to the War College, where you will spend the next 2 years studying a new course. It is a course on the tactical liability of arrogance. The primary case study will be your own. The color drained completely from the commander's face. He was a ghost, a hollow man. Specialist, the general continued, his eyes still on her, you are no longer a specialist. As of this moment, you are the new head of sector-wide signals intelligence and threat analysis. Your authority is absolute. Your mission is to teach us how to listen. He did not wait for a reply. The screen went dark. The operations center was quiet again. But it was a different kind of quiet. The old quiet had been born of fear, the fear of the commander's temper. This new quiet was born of respect. It was the quiet of professionals, focused on the mission. The humble commander was escorted from the room. He did not look at anyone. He was a man erased. The woman stood for a moment, then walked to the main console. Her console now. She sat down, her back straight, her hands resting beside the keyboard. She was a pool of absolute calm in a sea that was, for the first time, just as calm as she was. The senior analyst approached and placed a fresh cup of coffee on her desk. He said nothing. He did not need to. She gave him a slight, almost imperceptible nod of her head. The lesson of that day echoed through the institution. The story of the ghost signal became a mandatory part of officer training. It was a cautionary tale, a reminder that true strength does not need to announce itself. It is measured not in volume, but in results. It is found not in the chest-thumping declarations of ego, but in the quiet, disciplined mind that can hear a whisper in a hurricane. It taught a new generation of leaders that competence is the only currency that matters, and that the greatest enemy is not the one across the battlefield. It is the one in the mirror, the one that deafens you with your own noise.